Welcome back to the Dr. Cliff Show. In today's episode, we're talking about a few very interesting case studies that we've seen in our clinic. Coming up. All right, we are back for another episode of the Dr. Cliff Show. I'm Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am here today with my co-host.
Hi there, guys. My name is Kelsey Beck. I'm the audiology resident at Applied Hearing Solutions, and today we have quite an interesting show for you guys today. So audiologists discuss different cases that we get, especially if they're tricky cases or cases that are even slightly out of the norm in a process we call grand rounds. It's typically done across the medical field, so it's not unique to audiology in any way, but we definitely do this in our clinic at Applied Hearing Solutions, especially when we get an out-of-the-norm case. So we're going to go through some of those with you guys today. But before we get started, I think that Dr. Olson here, Dr. Cliff, has a sponsor for us.
That's right. Let's jump right into it. So some of the hearing aid cases that we're talking about in the episode today are very difficult cases, and we happen to see a lot of difficult cases actually in our clinic just by nature of what we do online. But if you have a mild to moderate hearing loss, you may be able to use over-the-counter hearing aids. Over-the-counter hearing aids are a completely new category of devices that was created by the FDA in October of 2022, and OTC hearing aids allow you to be purchasing them online in pharmacies. You can even purchase them at audiology clinics, but you do not need a hearing test or a prescription. However, you still have to be careful because not all of these over-the-counter hearing aids are created equal, which is why you should check out the Sontro over-the-counter hearing aids by Soundwave Hearing. Soundwave Hearing is actually headquartered in Oak Brook, which is in my home state of Illinois. They are a receiver in canal design, and they use their AutoTune smartphone app, which allows you to test your hearing and uses artificial intelligence to customize your initial programming. The app will also let you make self-programming adjustments to your Sontro OTC hearing aids to help you optimize their performance. If you would like to learn more about the Soundwave Sontro over-the-counter hearing aids, go to hearsoundwave.com. You can also check out my review video or check them out on my website, hearingup.com. All right, so we have, here, guys, if you have not hit the like and subscribe button yet, please do that for the show. We're trying to make this show reach as many people as possible. Today's episode is going to be extremely interesting. A lot of out-of-the-box type of cases that you can't just use straightforward thinking with, and that's why we wanted to bring these up. This first patient that we're getting into here was an 85-year-old male that I started treating back in 2020. This was the year of COVID. I don't think COVID had anything to do with how this case turned out, and I would consider this to be a non-successful case at the end of the day. But this, and we see this a lot inside of the clinic where we have a patient come in, they're like, listen, I don't want to be here. I don't have a hearing loss, but my spouse is telling me that if I didn't come, they were going to leave me, or
something
along those lines, right? And we say this in jest a little bit, but we do understand that hearing loss, untreated hearing loss, has a significant impact on individuals.
It does, and then it has a significant impact on the people that they love or who love them as well. And it's not always something that is a sudden hearing loss, right? And so if you're gradually losing your hearing, well, everything still just sounds normal to you, no matter how bad your hearing gets. And truthfully, I would say most of the people that we get in the office, even when they have a severe hearing loss, are like, sometimes I struggle. So it's really not uncommon for people to have a more severe hearing loss to not notice a hearing loss at all. And their spouses oftentimes do drag them into our office, and suddenly we're now also playing part marriage counselor too. So
that's right. Yes, we could double major in that, so to speak. So this individual's wife who had come in, she reported that he could not hear her, couldn't hear and understand the TV, couldn't hear in group situations, couldn't hear in restaurants, couldn't hear in the car, couldn't hear other female voices, and was constantly asking for repetition. And the really, sad thing here is that she felt like she couldn't even communicate with her own husband anymore at all. They were basically living two completely separate lives. And the thing here is that the patient completely denied that there was any type of hearing loss there. It was always an excuse of, oh, well, she's not facing me, or she didn't get my attention first, or she's in a different room when she's trying to talk to me. And this is something that we very commonly see
All the time, even if people do notice a hearing loss. I mean, these are all very common things to report, and not everybody associates them with their hearing loss, rather that everybody else is doing something incorrectly to make it hard on them. So it's not uncommon. Denial is strong with this one. But let's go ahead and take a look at his audiogram, his hearing test here, and see exactly what we had to work with. So we have the severity up here as well, but you can see that his ears, for the most part, are very symmetrical. So the right ear is those red circles, left ear is those blue X's, and the further down on this graph you go, the worse your hearing is. And it is set up like a piano keyboard, so you have the low pitches over on the left, working your way through the mid into the high pitches as you move to the right. And so we do see that he does have some normal hearing left here, but then as we go into those mid and into those high frequencies, we're even getting down to the moderately severe to severe hearing loss range. And actually too, what we have for the next graphic, we actually have the speech sounds, the letters that he actually cannot hear on his own. And so if you look at this, you see that on the left hand side we have all of those low frequencies. All that good volume is still accessible to him, but if you put up that next graphic there, Chris, with that gray shaded region, you can see that all of those speech sounds that are in that gray shaded region above the X's and the O's are no longer accessible to this person without the use of some sort of amplification, because no matter how loud somebody makes their voice, there is no physical way to get those sounds to be any louder on their own.
And the reason why someone would perceive that they don't have a hearing loss with this type of audiogram that we're looking at on the screen is that there are certain speech components that they can hear no problem.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, I can hear that everyone's talking to me, but the problem is that you can't actually understand them because you're not getting those high frequency clarity components of speech. Now, during testing, we also test word recognition scores, and we actually have those up on the screen here as well. And with word recognition scores, we're replacing the missing high frequency information in this particular case to see how well this individual would comprehend speech if we replace the missing information. And we can see that in his right ear, he understood speech at 100% accuracy. In his left ear, he understood speech at 96% accuracy. And which means that basically, if we replace that missing speech information and get it back to the brain with the use of a hearing aid, he can actually comprehend what he's hearing at a very high level of accuracy.
Absolutely. And then we also have one other score up there. We have that QuickSyn, the DBSNR loss score. Now, we've talked several times on this podcast about your DBSNR loss. It is essentially how loud you need speech over the background noise to be able to understand somebody clearly. Now, the normal range is between 0 and 3 decibels, and this person is coming in at 7 decibels. So even in a noisy situation, he still should be able to go into those situations with properly programmed hearing aids and still function very well and be able to have good and clear conversations, as long as someone is, enunciating their words, speaking up, and he has properly treated hearing loss.
And it would definitely be better than what he's at right now.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Like this is showing us best case scenario, if hearing aids are properly fit and programmed for the prescription for this hearing loss, that he would be able to only need 7 decibel separation of speech from the noise. And right now he's somewhere significantly higher than that without the use of hearing aids. And so we elected to actually fit this individual with receiver and canal devices. This is a pretty common treatment. And a lot of you out there, if you have this type of hearing loss, you're like, that doesn't even seem like that complicated of a hearing loss to treat. And you know what? You are absolutely right. It is not a difficult hearing loss to treat.
It truthfully is what we would have called, honestly, if we do it the right way, a slam dunk, where it's really straightforward. As long as we follow the steps appropriately and we do our real ear verification and we follow up with this patient appropriately, they should do very, very well. They've got great word understanding, have a really good shot at understanding people in background noise. All things considered, this should be a slam dunk.
Right. And now if you misprogram it, though, it could be a disaster.
Exactly.
You could have the best hearing aid in the world. If you misprogram it, it's a problem. The thing is that we did not misprogram these hearing aids. So we actually have another graphic here of the real ear measurement that we did. If you're not familiar with real ear measurement, this is basically the way that we ensure that we're amplifying these missing sounds to meet the person's prescription so they can actually get access to them and understand speech at a much higher level of accuracy. So if you look at the purple hash mark line that's going across the screen there, we have one for the right ear and for the left ear. That is the prescription for this individual's high frequency hearing loss. The solid purple line represents the amount of amplification the individual is receiving inside of their ear canals after that sound has been amplified. And so what we see here is that we are matching the vast majority of this individual's prescription. That is about as good as you would ever expect to get from an open fit receiver in canal hearing aid. In fact, I would say that you could argue that that's probably even better than most receiver in canal hearing aids would get you. So we know at this point that this individual would receive substantial benefit from these devices that we fit him with. But you know who refused to admit that there was any benefit?
That patient.
That patient. So we had him in for multiple counseling sessions. Listen, I'm not antagonistic with a lot of people, but sometimes I can be. I guess that's the Marine in me, or maybe it's the male in me. I don't know what it is, right? But I'm very understanding and sympathetic and empathetic to individuals' perceptions and how they live their lives. And so I don't ever want to come across as being like, you're lying to me. But I do have some evidence from his wife that he was lying, because while he may not have perceived that he was getting substantial benefit, it was very clear inside of that household when we started talking to his wife on this situation.
Absolutely. And I think that we even did an outcome measure, not with the patient, which is what we would normally do because we want to make sure that the patient perceives benefit, but we actually did this with his wife instead. Because he was refusing to admit that benefit, we sort of had to go in a kind of a backwards way in order to get this information. So we do have a graphic as well for the client-oriented scale of improvement. We call it the COSI here. But the goals that were listed on that left-hand side of the screen, you know, perception of wife's voice in the kitchen, hearing her better in general, not having to go right up in front of him to talk to him, the volume level of the TV came down a whole lot. And if you look, the degree of change, everything is in that better and much better category 95% of the time. So this person's wife was absolutely on track with having lots of benefit perceived, even if her husband refused to admit it.
Yeah, and you know, here's the funny thing is that, like, if that were the case, you know, I'm thinking about my wife, Ashley. If there was something that I had to do to make her be substantially happier with our marriage and with me as a person, I like to think that I'd do it, but I don't know, maybe I'd be as stubborn as well. But that's one of those things where, you know, if you see those outcome measures and I was like, oh my gosh, like this has significantly had a positive impact on our marriage and ability to communicate, even if I didn't want to wear hearing aids, I like to think that I would.
I think a lot of people would like to think that they would. I just don't know that everybody is the same once you get into a situation like this. And there are a lot of emotions that go into hearing loss and hearing treatment in general. I mean, and things that cannot be counseled away. You know, there's a lot of, you know, feeling that go into it. So do I feel like I am as much of a man, as much as we don't like to admit that that is a feeling? It may exist for this person. I don't know. I don't actually know this particular patient. But what we do know is that there are risks to leaving an untreated hearing loss. So there are definitely risks as far as you're at a higher risk for falls, depression, social isolation, obviously relationship challenges with both your significant other and your family. There's also a huge stress on your cognitive load because you are going into these situations and you are forcing your brain to operate in a way it wasn't designed to. You're forcing it to utilize and recruit other parts of the brain that were not created for auditory stimulation in order to figure out just what the heck somebody is saying sometimes.
Yeah, and it's just not worth it. I mean, all the negatives that come along with untreated or undertreated hearing loss is just, it's just not worth it. I don't know how else to say it. But at the end of the day, everyone's probably thinking, well, yeah, I mean, Cliff Olson probably got this guy convinced to wear his hearing aids. He went all Marine Corps drill instructor on the patient, and I can tell you that it was not a positive outcome. This patient basically took these hearing aids and just stopped wearing them, and you actually have a term for this.
I do indeed. So in grad school, I was taught this unofficial term called the ITD, the in-the-drawer hearing aid. We do have a type of hearing aid called the ITE, in the ear. Fun play on words, ITD. So that's, I actually had another ITD recently as well that we could have presented on too. So it does happen. It happens to the best of us. And there are a lot of things that we might have to do just to wait for a patient to be ready to really pursue treatment and to pursue it effectively.
That's true. And, you know, we talk about all the time, well, you can make excuses for pretty much anything. This treatment failure is my fault. So different people need to be communicated with in different ways. Different people are motivated by different things. And while I was able to encourage this patient at least to take this step of attempting to use hearing treatment, it was my fault for not making sure that I was counseling this patient in a way that helped them realize the ramifications of their decisions not to treat their hearing loss long term.
So question for you then, what would you have done differently? Is there something that, another tactic that you've thought about as it haunts you before you go to sleep at night?
Yeah, no, not really. I do try to learn from every single case that I have. I do admit that I took a little bit more of a in-your-face antagonistic approach, because sometimes with patients you kind of like mirror and match their energy that they're giving to you. I feel like we had a very good rapport together, me and this individual. In fact, I actually liked this individual in the office, but my staff would regularly say, it sounds like you two are getting pretty heated in there. But it was coming from a place of love. Like, I wasn't just criticizing him for making a bad decision, for not treating his hearing loss and doing it for his wife. It's just the way that our two personalities work together. And I think that if you would ask even him if he would, have a beer with me, I think that he'd be like, oh yeah, I'd have a beer with Cliff.
He wouldn't be able to hear you in that restaurant.
He wouldn't be able to hear, but yes, I get your point there. So, but again, it's a learning experience. I feel like I communicate well with a lot of different personality types, but there are always occasions where my communication style does not jive, and I'm not using a proper form of communication with certain people.
It's a really good point.
All right, so we have another patient here. We're going to move on from that unsuccessful treatment to kick off the show. Maybe I should have reordered this stuff to have it like a start off on a good note instead of on a bad note.
I don't know. It's a humbling experience, and that's really the point of why we do something like this anyway. It is to talk about the things that maybe we would do differently, or the things where we weren't as successful, or why someone wasn't successful at first. So I think it was a great opener, in my humble opinion, anyway.
So we had a more recent case here come into the clinic. So there's a patient that I've been working with for about 4 years now, started with me in 2019, and he splits his time between Arizona and Colorado. He actually spends most of his time up there in Colorado. Now, this particular individual, we had done an audiogram on him coming into our clinic initially. I believe we have that audiogram that we can share up here on the screen. And you can see here that this is a very steeply sloping high-frequency hearing loss. And for those individuals out there who do not know what those little arrows coming off of the X's and O's means, what is that?
Yeah, the arrows coming off those X's and O's are where we hit the limit of our audiometer, so our testing materials, and we cannot make it any louder, and yet we're still not getting a response at that frequency from the particular patient. So we were not able to obtain any kind of sensation from the patient that he was able to hear any of those.
And a lot of audiologists watching this show would look at that and be like, wow, that looks like it could be a type of an audiogram that may be a candidate for a hybrid cochlear implant or a cochlear implant. So what were our speech scores for this patient at that time in 2019?
Yeah, in 2019, in his right ear, he scored 40% word understanding. In his left ear, 68% word understanding. And when he used both ears together to participate in the listening task, he also scored a 68%. So not a whole lot of extra benefit that we would typically see with using both ears together, but we do know that that right ear isn't dragging down the performance of the left ear when it receives the stimulation.
And ideally we would see scores up in the 80s and 90%, right? That means you're getting a lot of clarity when you amplify that sound. But given that he has a lot of areas that can't even be stimulated with the hearing aid, it makes it really tricky, not to mention just the whole process of treating a steeply sloping high frequency hearing loss to get amplification in the lows a little bit there, but not, create occlusion effect and things like that. It's just very tricky to do. Now, we discussed cochlear implants a lot at the very beginning because I'm like, I'm not sure if cochlear implants would be most appropriate for you or if hearing aids are still your best treatment option. So let's spend some time talking about it and you tell me what you think. And I'm very pro cochlear implants. I don't think that you have many other audiologists out there who work in hearing aids who are as pro cochlear implants as I am. There probably are. But anyway, so we discussed the idea of cochlear implants in a very positive light because I do think that if he went in for a cochlear implant evaluation, even at that time, that he may be a candidate for them. But after we discussed different pros and cons and the options that he had, he's like, I really just feel like right now I want to continue to stay with hearing aids. So I ended up fitting him with new hearing aids at that time. He was over the moon, happy with how he was hearing. So at that point, my focus became from, discussing cochlear implants to let's just keep him functioning this well with hearing aids as long as we possibly can.
Exactly. And you were able to fit him with bilateral hearing aids, and he was having really good success for a very long time. So this original audiogram took place in 2019, and we're obviously in 2023 now. However, he did run into a small hiccup where he suddenly wasn't really doing very well, and so he went into his audiologist that he actually does have in Colorado, who helps to kind of track and maintain his hearing alongside us as well. And so he went in for another hearing test because he just wasn't doing very well, and he wasn't happy with how his hearing aids were working and how he was hearing and understanding speech. So he went in for that hearing test. They found a slight change in hearing, but overall nothing that we would ever consider significant or a change in his prescription by any stretch of the imagination. His speech scores had stayed about the same as well, so really there was no real auditory reason for why he was suddenly struggling. And so at that time in September of 2022, they did increase the amount of gain that he was getting, so they increased the overall volume of his hearing aids to try to make speech understanding a little bit easier. And they referred him at this point for a cochlear implant candidacy evaluation. And so he went through with that evaluation and is actually approved for a CI, I believe, in the right ear.
Yeah, so, the thing is that I had tested him earlier that year in 2022 just to make sure. We do this typically annually for patients. We call it a platinum visit. They come in if they haven't had a hearing test in at least 2 years. We'll do another hearing test. Some patients, we do a hearing test every year for them. We run diagnostics on the hearing aids. We do maintenance on the hearing aids. We do any programming adjustments that we need to based on any prescriptive changes that they've had. And I had done that not right before, but in the same year that he had this drop-off.
Yeah, I believe it was February of 2022.
Yeah. And so, but no crazy changes. And so he went in, and the thing that was surprising is that he was doing so bad from a hearing perspective. And it kind of came on relatively suddenly. And he's like, man, like, if I can't use hearing aids anymore, I guess I have to go in to get a cochlear implant evaluation. So that's what he did. And then he's a candidate, but he was kind of like, man, this is a big decision. He had been working with me for 4 years at that point, whereas he had only seen the cochlear implant audiology team and the other hearing aid audiology team up in Colorado one time apiece. So he wanted to come back down, talk to us about cochlear implant candidacy, that he was approved for candidacy for that, and he watched some of our cochlear implant episodes that we've done on this show. And when we were talking about it, things just didn't add up, because he's like, yeah, they said there wasn't a change in hearing, but they increased the volume, and actually it's kind of worse now that they increased the volume. And I'm like, it just seems like something's not adding up. So I kind of paused the appointment with him at that time, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just go check your devices out, because something is not adding up. I might have to do another hearing test on you. But even then, he had a hearing test a couple months before that. So I'm like, let me just go check things out. So I go into the back, and I ended up putting these hearing aids through testing. Now, just to show you what a good diagnostic test on a hearing aid looks like, we're going to put a graphic up, because this is what his hearing aid tested like before he went back up to Colorado. All right. So everything was in good working order. We see nice smooth curves over there on the right-hand side. The output, the gain, the distortion levels, the amount of noise the hearing aid is generating, all of those are completely within specs. And this tells us that the hearing aids, at least at the time when he left, were functioning mechanically correctly. But you want to see what I tested in his hearing aids when he came back?
Oh, it's going to be bad.
It's going to be bad. So let's show up the bad test box measures.
Oh gosh, my heart.
I know. But here's the thing. It was actually so bad. So you see the jagged lines over on the far right-hand side. It was so bad that we didn't even get through the first half of the test. I didn't even test distortion, because distortion would have been through the roof, 50, 60, 70% distortion.
I almost wish you had, so we could have seen what it was.
I know, but we were working with a hearing aid that doesn't play nice in the test box a whole lot too.
That
you know
is
what
true.
I'm talking about.
I do indeed.
So here's the thing. When I identify this, and we basically got the same type of measure for both hearing aids. Both of his hearing aids fell out of specification roughly around the same time. Could have been due to moisture infiltration, could have, anything.
A number of things.
Anything could have caused this. But when this happened to him, and he's like, man, I'm not hearing well. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get a hearing test, get everything checked out. And they did a hearing test. They said no different. And instead of running a test box measure, they just increased the volume on his hearing aids.
I wish that surprised me. I really do. I mean, I know that how many people don't even have the test box measurements where they can run a diagnostic on a hearing aid. I mean, and it's not super common to have a clinic that does them and who does them routinely, to where they would honestly really catch anything like this. And to have had this patient who had been doing well up until that point suddenly wasn't doing anything, and only to really check like one of the 3 potential causes of this type of a change, where it could have been his hearing. It also could have just been that the hearing aid needed a really good cleaning. And it could have also been the diagnostics of the hearing aids, which of course it was, but he had gone through the CI eval. He had been approved for a CI. He could have been implanted before he ever came to us. And, you know, who knows if he would have regretted that or not. Like, I mean, you just don't know. And so to just not do a very key step, in my opinion, is really not great. It's not a good look.
Yeah, you know, and I ended up fitting him with loaner devices in the office because I'm like, I can't send you home with nothing in your ears. So I was able to upload identical settings that we had programmed for him in, February of 2022. Yep. Upload those into these loaner devices, and he puts them in his ears. He's like, wow, like, my hearing's back. Like, if I could hear this well all the time, I wouldn't want to go get a cochlear implant. And so here's the thing. Like I said, I'm very pro cochlear implants. I want people who want to get cochlear implants and who qualify for cochlear implants to get cochlear implants because it is a life-changing experience. But what I don't want is I don't want people who are not truly candidates to get a cochlear implant. And I want that person not to feel like they're being forced into that decision. I want them to do it because they want to do it.
Well, and that's the thing about the evaluation for a cochlear implant as well, is that you're supposed to be tested in your best aided condition. And so for him, his best aided condition would have been with both of his hearing aids that he had been very successful with previously, but they literally tested him with atrociously malfunctioning devices. Yeah. There's no way he could have like not been considered a candidate with how terrible those specs were. So
no, he could have fallen victim a little bit to the whole Dr. Cliff effect. So when patients go into other offices and they're like, hey, I'm a Dr. Cliff patient, they're going to say, oh, well, we know Dr. Cliff is going to be doing all of these things the right way, so we can be confident that your hearing aids are going to be programmed correctly, they're going to be meeting manufacturer specifications, they're going to be maintained well, and all of that. But you can never assume that there hasn't been something wrong going on.
I have literally seen someone in the office drop their own hearing aid, and suddenly it's when you shake it, you can hear the components rattling on the inside just because they dropped it from a little bit too high. Like, anything can happen. You have to check the basics. So I think I've sort of
right?
laid into that enough. But we did have another conversation with this patient well about repairing his old hearing aids, which had been a few years old, I believe 4.5 years old at that point. Or would he see an upgrade in technology giving him more benefit than he has been having, aside from the malfunctioning hearing aids, but in general, would that be a better option for him?
That's a good point. So, like, I always like to compare apples to apples. I'm never the type of audiologist that will, if someone's coming off of malfunctioning hearing aid, put them in new tech and say, here's what you can experience from new tech compared to your old tech. You always want to have apples to apples, which means that you're not fitting someone, or that you're not having someone do this comparison with devices that are clearly malfunctioning. You always put them in those devices that are functioning properly. So when we have this discussion, it's like, okay, you've been in loaners, you know what they sound like, all right? We can get your other hearing aids repaired to sound like this, or we can go the route of new technology. And so it would cost X dollars to get these repaired. It would cost X dollars to get new tech. What do you want to do? And then if there's questions about, like, will it really improve? Well, we were about 3 generations newer at this point.
Correct.
I typically say you don't want to generate or renew technology every single generation. You want to skip 1 or 2 generations before you're going to notice a significant difference. For this particular individual, he decided it was in his own best interest to upgrade the technology instead of repairing devices that were 4.5 years old.
Exactly. And just so that everybody is aware, he is doing very, very well now, and he does really like his new hearing aids, and he is back in Colorado living his best life.
Boom.
Able to hear with both of his ears.
Without a cochlear implant.
Cochlear implant, exactly.
All right, so we got our next sponsor here.
We do indeed, and for today's sponsor, we're going to talk about Earwax MD. So I love Earwax MD. It is the thing that we use probably the most with that stubborn earwax in our office. We all do have some amount of earwax, and in the proper quantities, really good for your ears, can be helpful to keep the ears moisturized, protect from dust and debris, and even provide some antimicrobial properties. So sometimes we also have too much earwax, and when we have that stubborn earwax, Earwax MD uses sodium and potassium bicarbonate to break down that earwax, glycolic acid to exfoliate the skin and dead skin cells from the ear canals, and then glycerin to help hydrate the ear canal, allows that earwax, when it is more stubborn, to just slide right out of the ear canal. So what you'll use is 10 to 15 drops, let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, then you'll flush your ear out with some water, and that really will just allow that nasty earwax impaction to go ahead and relieve itself. Again, we do use this in the clinic all of the time, and I will say it makes a night and day difference. Even when someone has extra stubborn earwax, sending them home with a little bit of that to go ahead and use on their own. That way it's nice and ready for removal when they come back. So you can purchase Earwax MD at Eosera.com, CVS, Walgreens, and other national retailers.
Awesome. All right. So our next case study here, this is a very interesting one and maybe complex one. So buckle up and get ready, because we have a 58-year-old male who came into our clinic wearing hearing aids for over 10 years at this point, and he actually uses bicross hearing treatment. Now, I do understand that bicross might be a foreign concept to you. Now, I have a ton of bicross, cross, and amp cross videos online if you want to familiarize yourself with this, if it sounds like this could be you in this particular individual situation. But he never heard well over the entire time of him having hearing treatment. Never really heard that well one-on-one, in background noise, in a variety of different situations. And so fortunately, this individual ended up stumbling across enough of our informational videos about this particular type of hearing loss that he ended up coming into our clinic. So what is the type of hearing loss that we have for him?
So let's put up that audiogram here so we can all take a good look together. We do have the moderate to severe, even into that profound range in that right ear. We do have an asymmetry between his two ears. Now, he has had the asymmetry evaluated, so we were not concerned that there was any other medical condition underlying this asymmetry between the two ears. But in any case, we have that going on with his ears from a sound detection, so a threshold standpoint, but we also were able to acquire some speech scores as well. And we did speech scores a couple of different volumes essentially when we did this. So in his right ear, when we played speech at 95 decibels, so really loud, he was able to score 20% accuracy in his right ear. If we even went up to 100 decibels in that right ear, his score actually went down to 12%, which is very important to understand, because sometimes when you have those dead regions in your cochlea, in your hearing organ, if you stimulate too much, you're just going to cause a whole bunch of distortion that really does not clarify anything. It actually just makes it worse.
Yeah, louder is not always better, and I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Absolutely. But then we also then have scores for his left ear, and this is where it gets a little trickier. At 95 decibels, that same first time level we tested the right ear at, he scored 64%, but when we increased that to 100 decibels, he actually scored 88%. So for the left ear, louder was better. So we're working with two different ears here, but how do the two ears perform together? So I was not able to test him at 100 decibels in both ears because it was too uncomfortable, too loud overall, but I was able to test him at 95 decibels, and he still maintained a score of 88% at a softer volume, so he is getting benefit from having amplification in both ears. That's not how he was currently set up when he did come to see us, though, so we want to make sure that we're evaluating what we might have done from the beginning, but because he was already coming to us with a bicross treatment, which we do have a graphic actually to kind of help clarify what bicross is. So first we have a graphic of the head shadow effect, and so the head shadow effect is when a sound source is coming from a particular direction, but then it has to travel around the head in order to hit that other ear, and by the time it hits that other ear, it's actually much softer, and you can't really have good clarity out of that. So if sound is coming in from his right side, he's not really able to make good use out of it because he doesn't have great word understanding. But in his left ear, if we're able to route that sound over to his left ear, he'd actually get much better clarity even from sounds that are coming from the right. So let's go ahead and put up that cross thing right here. So we do have a transmitter, so it's not a hearing aid on that right ear, but it takes sounds that are coming from the right side and it actually shuffles it over to the hearing aid on the left side, and that left side is amplified to an appropriate amount that gives him the right amplification in that left ear, gives him that good clarity of speech from the right hand side.
And so that's what he's coming into our clinic. But there also is a consideration of, well, he does have some speech understanding left in that right ear, which is his poorer ear. And sometimes you actually want to stimulate that. And one way that we would stimulate that is with amp cross. So amp cross is when we're amplifying sound in the bad ear, but we're also crossing it over to a hearing aid in the better hearing side and then amplifying that if necessary as well. So that's what we would call amp cross. For him, because of his word recognition scores, having some good scores in his left ear and having some scores that he could at least hear and understand something in his right ear, you might want to consider doing amp cross with this type of hearing loss. But we ultimately decided
to keep him in that bicross treatment, and he was very happy with how he was hearing, even with one ear, though he doesn't really seem to be performing as well as he should be with that 88% word understanding. I mean, that's just not what he's reporting to us at all. And so it was very important to us, again, following those steps, making sure that the hearing aid is clean first and foremost, that we are passing diagnostic testing, those meeting your manufacturer specifications, unlike our last patient. But he was doing both of those things. His hearing aids had a little bit of clogged microphones, but it dampened the sound, but not all that much. Passed diagnostic testing, clean as a whistle. However, there is a slight problem that we did run into with the Oticon software.
That's right. So when I tried to hook up the hearing aid to the software with this cross transmitter attached to it, trying to store his settings, there's an issue sometimes with Oticon software to where you end up reprogramming the device and you can't actually store the data right from the hearing aids, because I really wanted to check and see where he was at throughout these, 5 years that he had these devices up to this point, or maybe even longer at that point. But I wasn't able to do it. And so what we ended up doing is we actually put them into first fit settings, because I was going to go in and probably reprogram him anyway inside. But I wanted to see what the default software programming would be for his exact type of hearing loss if you were going to do bi-cross transmission with him. And what we found was actually pretty shocking on first fit.
Was it though?
Not really shocking, you're right.
So this is what we found here. So again, that pink hash mark line is the prescription for his hearing loss in that left ear. And then that solid line that's actually over the prescriptive targets in those low frequencies and under in even those high frequencies as well. We're clearly having a mismatch here because those do not match up in any way, shape, or form. So he's getting a lot of low frequency volume, which is actually covering up all of the clarity he could be getting from those few moments where we're actually above his prescription in those mid frequencies there. And so really what he's getting is he's getting a lot of volume and it's drowning out all of his clarity.
Yeah, and so this is another reason why real ear measurement is so important, because if you just trust the manufacturer's software, that is the kind of garbage that you get out of it. Like, no wonder, like, if people who struggle with their hearing aids, it's no surprise because a lot of them are just on these first fit settings.
Well, and what I'll say about this patient too is that I know that we lost his settings and they had made tweaks according to the patient who, when he was reporting to us, they had made tweaks over the years, but he had never had that real ear measurement done. He was most likely on first fit because he told us, this actually sounds a little bit sharper than it did when I first came in here, but it sounds pretty similar. So I know that he must have been at least close to these first fit settings, if not exactly on those first fit settings to begin with. But
the good news is he wandered into our office.
Exactly.
And we're like, okay, we're not going to let you leave like this because this is a complete train wreck disaster. So we went in and we started reprogramming the devices. Now, there's a couple different things we had to do to reprogram the hearing aids. We had to reprogram the sound that was going into the left ear on that hearing aid. We had to adjust compression settings for loud level sounds and soft level sounds. Once we got that knocked out, let me show you what a good real ear measurement looks like in comparison with what he had. So this is for average level speech. After our reprogramming, we're still trying to match that purple hash mark line with the solid line, and you can see that we are doing that much better now, and we're not over amplifying the low frequencies, we're amplifying the high frequencies the best we possibly can with the equipment that he currently had.
And then what's even more amazing is that he was like, wow, this already sounds so much better. But we weren't quite done yet, because not only do we have to make sure that the hearing aid on the left-hand side is actually functioning the way that it should be and amplifying sound the way that it should be, but we also have to make sure that that transmitter on the right ear is actually transmitting to the appropriate prescription in his left ear. So we also verified that. So the first graphic that we have here, this is just a running of us putting sound just into that left hearing aid without having the cross transmitter activated here. And that's basically our goal. That is what we want to make sure, that the cross is actually getting over into that better ear. So the next graphic that we have here, this is the head shadow effect that I was talking about earlier. So when we play sound into that poor ear without the cross being activated, we want to know how big is that difference by the time it hits the microphones on the left side. This tells us that we're about 7 to 8 decibels reduction, which is almost cutting that volume in half by the time it hits his left ear. So we need to make sure that that cross is actually making up for that sound that he's losing. So we have that graphic here as well. And in that green line you see here, it is a little bit wavier, but we are compensating for that head shadow effect nearly perfectly to where we know without a doubt that that cross transmitter is getting him all of that sound from his right side into his left ear at his prescriptive targets, and we can be confident that he is getting good speech understanding from that right side.
Yeah, and if you don't do that verification, so just so you know, when we started this verification, we're like, we're still undershooting a little bit. So we had to adjust the cross balance to get it to where we were crossing over enough sound to actually overcome that head shadow effect. And if you do this well, it sounds like, okay, someone's talking on my bad side, but I can understand them very clearly in my better hearing ear that's been programmed properly. You don't program this properly, you don't verify it properly, you don't get the full benefit out of your devices that probably cost you thousands of dollars to procure from pretty much any provider throughout the country.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really, really wonderful about this case that I really do enjoy is the end result. So a couple days later, he actually called back, and our lovely front office lady, Savannah, was able to answer the phone. And he said that he has not heard this well in over 12 years. So it matters. It matters how you program the hearing aid. It matters that you do real ear, and it matters on a very personal level to the person that you're actually fitting with hearing aids.
It absolutely matters, and that's exactly why I started the HearingUp Provider Network. This is a problem that we've had inside of our profession for a long time at this point, and I'm like, how can I take the message board that I have online and help patients find providers who are really good at what they do and who follow these best practices. So if you're looking for someone in your area who's doing the things that we're doing inside of our clinic, go to hearingup.com and search for a local provider in your area. Every single provider who is on this provider map has been vetted by me, and I feel confident in sending you to them to make sure that you get your hearing treated the best way possible, and that's by following comprehensive best practices. So again, go to hearingup.com, find a local provider in your area, and experience the difference that exceptional hearing care makes.
Absolutely. So we've got one more case for everybody today. This is from a 54-year-old female patient that we had not too long ago. And she has actually been a patient of Dr. Cliff's for over 4 years at this point. When she initially came into Dr. Cliff, she was wearing hearing aids for 7 years that did not fit, that were painful. The custom ear molds were not fitting appropriately, and she was uncomfortable every single day, but she needed them.
What's my number one rule in a hearing aid fitting?
If we do not have physical comfort, we do not have anything. It is a don't pass go. Do not collect $200. You have to get the physical fit comfortable, because if it's not comfortable, unlike this particular patient, most people will not wear them.
That's true.
I mean, she's such a trooper.
She's
such
the
a
exception
trooper.
to the rule. I can tell you that there's no males who would have worn these hearing aids uncomfortably for 7 years.
Don't get me started.
Nonetheless, so this individual actually has a pretty complex hearing loss that moves. The target moves all the time. So diagnosed with Meniere's disease in the left ear in 2005, the right ear in 2007. We do have a graphic that we can put up here that shows you a hearing test that I had done initially in the turquoise there, and then an updated hearing test here more recently in the blue and in the red. And so you can see the fluctuation there.
Yeah, and I selected these particular tests because this shows that there is variation from even one day to another. And so these are just the two more extremes. There's definitely more of a shifting in that left ear, and it does fluctuate more frequently than the right ear does. We also do have some speech scores for this patient as well, and I think it's really important to highlight these because there are times where her speech scores are 52% in the right ear, 26% in the left ear, and then when you use both ears together, you get 62%. But we also tested her not too long ago where I actually did her testing, scored 76% correct in her right ear, 96% in the left ear, and 100% when she uses both ears together. So not only does this person's thresholds shift, but we also know that her ability to understand and have good clarity also shifts. So we really are shooting at a moving target when we're talking about her.
So something that I don't think would surprise anyone about this person at this point is that she never complains about anything, right? She lived with pain for 7 years wearing these hearing aids, never complained about it until she's like, okay, I got to do something. And it was 7 years later, she was ready for tech upgrade and all of that, which is probably the reason why she's like actually going to do something about it at that time. We were able to get her physically fit well. It took several attempts and remakes to do, and our number one focus, like literally from that point going forward, even if we sent her hearing aids in for repair or remake or something like that, they had to be comfortable when they came back. And if they were not comfortable, we send them back as many times as you have to make it comfortable, because that again is a no-go if it's uncomfortable.
And all of the manufacturers let you do it. You have a remake window. If it is not comfortable for your patient, send it back. That's it.
Right.
Send it back. Tell your provider if it is not comfortable, make them send it back. They are allowed to.
So now that we got her squared away at that point, back in 2019, I think when she started coming to see me.
19, yes.
She has been happy with that. But here's the thing, and this is the thing that I believe is very important for providers out there, is that even if you, as someone who's wearing hearing aids, is not complaining about different things that you're noticing that you're not necessarily happy about, it is the job of your provider to dig and to figure out, okay, let me find out about these situations. Tell me about these situations. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. At least a couple times a year to really figure out if there are areas of improvement that could be made. So in March of 2023, here just last month, after all these years, we discovered that she likes using the telecoil in the streaming programs. She can't hear people well in meetings, especially in meetings that she doesn't use telecoil, but she's still having trouble with she's still having trouble with people on the left-hand side. So let me kind of clarify this for you here. The telecoil is something that I'm a big fan of as well. Shocker. If someone likes cochlear implants, they probably like telecoil. So she would love this telecoil in these meetings that she would do, but she found that while she could hear everyone in the audience who's talking into the microphone and it's getting pumped right into her ears, she's like, this is great. But then one of her colleagues leans over and wants to say something to her. She couldn't hear and understand them. So what was she doing? She just wasn't using the telecoil, and she didn't tell me about this. So I'm looking at her data and I'm like, why is your telecoil data low? Like, why are you not using your telecoil? And I don't know if I crossed my arms with her, but I feel like this is like I'm having a scolding session here. Like, why are you not using it? Oh, well, because I can't hear my colleagues. I can hear everyone else great. I'm like, well, you know, you can tell me these things because I can adjust the microphone sensitivity on the hearing aids so you can hear your colleague and you can hear the people through the telecoil. But would that have ever come out if I didn't actually proactively dig at that?
Absolutely not. And again, with an experienced hearing aid user, with an inexperienced hearing aid user, there is, you might not know what questions to ask. You might not know what's normal. You might not have any idea what we have a fix for. And the main part of my job after the hearing aid fitting is to make you be as critical of your devices as you possibly can, because if I have a fix for something but I don't know I have to fix it, I can't do anything about it. But that's the thing, though, is so it's like, even if you just wish something could be better, if I don't have a fix for it, I'll let you know. But if you just think maybe potentially might get a little bit better, tell your provider. There's a lot that we can do with any manufacturer of device. Some give us more flexibility than others, but this is something that's very easy to fix and is, I mean, a click of the button, really.
I know. Well, a couple clicks. I think I had to adjust it maybe 3 to 6 decibels.
It was the 6 decibel
So that's
change.
6 clicks, and I might have gotten carpal tunnel from that, but it's worth it, right? But that's the thing, is that, like, I think that you should demand more out of your hearing care professional. If it's every time you go in, it's just like, hey, how things going? Oh, they're going good. All right, well, let's clean your hearing aids and get you out. Like, that is not them doing their job the best way they possibly can.
Yeah, that is not following comprehensive best practices, probably even close. And I know that every clinic is set up very differently, and then there are some clinics that are set up to afford us more time with our patients to be able to do this, because it does take time. I mean, that appointment, I believe, where we did make those changes, I think it was scheduled for half an hour, and you think you guys were there for like an hour and a half or something like that. And so there is something to be said for how, you've set up Applied Hearing Solutions, but if your provider isn't digging for these things and you don't know what to ask, things that you wish could get fixed just don't get fixed.
They just don't get fixed, you know, and most people spend thousands of dollars on hearing treatment. You should be getting what you pay for when you go and you spend that kind of money.
Yeah,
right?
And I think it all boils down to this, is that hearing aids are the tool. Hearing aids are not the answer. Hearing aids are the tool. It is how you set up the tool. It is how you use the tool, and it's how you maintain the tool afterwards that gives a patient success.
Absolutely. So just to touch base again, you know, she has a fluctuating hearing loss. And I decided also at that point, it's like, well, shoot, if you're having difficulty from people on your bad side, let me set up an amp cross program for you. So whenever you do have a fluctuation where you can't understand people from your bad side, we can at least route sound from the bad side into the good side. We talked about amp cross a little bit earlier, and that can substantially improve how well she's hearing during a fluctuation. But that was not something she requested because, quite frankly, she probably didn't even know it existed.
I think a lot of providers don't even know that it exists.
A lot of providers probably don't know it exists. But, you know, the point here is that we should always be constantly striving to get better and constantly digging with our patients to see if we can make their hearing treatment better. And it's not always adding a new piece of hearing aid technology. Sometimes it's about taking what you have and making it work better rather than having to jump to the next latest and greatest shiny object that's being marketed to us.
I feel like that's a little bit of a thread that I didn't notice beforehand that kind of connected all of these cases together, is really just making sure that you're using what you have, working well with it, and making sure you're getting the most out of that tool that you have. So in any case, I'm not able to get onto the live feed, unfortunately, for our Q&A
how the tables
here.
have turned, though. So
Are you able to?
I am in on I'm in on Facebook. So let me see if I got a few questions in here. So my buddy Richard Pocker, he watches the show. So he advises all new cochlear implant recipients to write down everything they like or dislike about their hearing in a notebook. So when they visit the audiologist for fine tuning, they don't forget to ask about everything and then leave saying, "Nuts, I forgot to mention XYZ." It makes the visit much more efficient. I couldn't agree more with Richard. We tell patients all the time that, what do we tell them? We have a thing that we say.
Oh boy, you're putting me on the spot. It's in my head.
So what I say is that our ability to be good at what we do depends on how much information we can pull out of you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so, yes, it helps if you can come in with a list of information to say, hey, here's all the problems I'm having. Oh, here's some good things I have too, right? And we're like, oh, great. Let's go down those line by line and fix all of them, right? And then if it's like, you got nothing? Really nothing? Okay, well, tell me about how you did at that restaurant you told me you went to the other day. Could you hear everybody at the table? Oh, you struggle with someone on your right-hand side? Interesting. Let's dig into that a little bit more, right?
Absolutely. And then the other thing about that too is there's a feature called data logging in all of the major manufacturers' programming software, where it doesn't track phone calls or anything like that. It doesn't track your location, but it does collect data about your auditory environment. And oftentimes those people who tell me, nope, everything's fine, I have no complaints, nothing to do here, I pull up that data logging and I say, you spent 50% of your time in the speech and noise program, for example. Tell me about that. Oh, you wish that was better? So even just going through the software with somebody, we end up pulling out a whole lot of information that, again, you might not have even known I had a fix for.
Absolutely. Now, Rachel Garcia, I actually know Rachel Garcia. So she says Savannah is the best. Her and Diane are a dream front office team.
Killer.
And Ashley, Monday through Wednesday.
Well,
I love that.
Thank you guys for the shout out for our front office staff. I know that they work exceptionally hard to provide the best care, even if it's not in the office with us. So thank you guys.
You know, and Marilyn Heinrichs, Dr. Marilyn Heinrichs, who works with Rachel Garcia out there in Texas. I can't remember the name of the actual city in Texas, but they're part of the best, the HearingUp provider network.
Oh, great.
Which is fantastic. And then my mother also, okay. So my mother, Terry, she dealt with Savannah over the phone this week. Oh, dealt with.
Oh boy, that sounds bad.
She was great.
Oh,
helped me get my loaners activated. So my mother's tap control stopped working on her hearing aids.
Oh, I know, because I also helped your mom get the TV streamer all up and running, and we had a grand old time, as we always do on our Facebook stream as well.
That's awesome. And last one here, guys. So Brian, actually, I appreciate you because when I've been trying to figure out what's been going on with our live stream, you've been jumping on and kind of giving me feedback on that. And again, you said that there's excellent audio today, the clarity's good, and the video sharpness on this episode is on point. So
fantastic.
Looking good.
Well, looking good in 4K, right?
Awesome. Yeah, 4K. Well, I don't know. I think we might be 1080p. We'll see.
All right, cool.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. That's all the time that we have for today. today. Really appreciate you joining us here for this episode where we're talking about a bunch of case studies that we've had. If you feel like you're struggling, make sure you check out HearingUp.com. You can find us apparently live again on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Arizona time on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and WTSM TV. And as always, we'll see you next week.